Hello, everyone, and welcome back to BS Free MD. We're super excited because it's our first in-studio guest with us today. And in case you haven't been watching our shows and are new, we have interviewed Pamela Garfield Jaeger a couple times before, and now she's here in the studio with us. She goes by the Truthful Therapist on all of her socials, and we will link all those at the end and talk more about it. But so good to have you in the studio with us, Pam. We're super excited. I don't know, where do you want to start? You've been doing like a lot since we talked to you last. Tell us kind of what's been going on in the last year.
Oh gosh, what's been happening last year? Well, I've been publishing a lot of books. My most recent project is a children's book, which I didn't even bring. What was I thinking?
We can pop those in post ed.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're just 20 minutes away from the studio. Anyway, I just published a children's book called Froggy Girl.
Yes. I remember you talking about that. So tell the audience a little bit of kind of the gist about the inspiration behind Froggy Girl.
So I had published that other book, which is called A Practical Response to Gender Distress,
Right.
Tips and Tools for Families. And I was watching it on Amazon as I was selling it because I was so excited, a new author, you know, you stock your new book. And I saw it sitting next to all of these horrible, disgusting, sexualized books for children and teens. And I just thought, wow, we need more books that teach kids to accept themselves for how they were born and just not be learning that they need to change themselves in order to fit in and, you know, be accepted in the world. So I decided to write this children's book, and I got inspired. The actual rhymes came to me in the middle of the night one day. I woke up with the rhymes in my head and started writing them down, and I got inspired to make it into a real project.
That's really pretty cool. I think of the times when stuff comes to me in the middle of the night and I don't write it down. A lot of times it's like crazy sci-fi dreams and stuff, but that's really amazing, like just to have that inspiration in the middle of the night come to you like that and actually like.
So did you have to write it down? Because every single time I have like an inspiration like that and I don't write it down, I'm like, I will remember this. This is totally gold, and I wake up and it's gone.
Right. I guess so. I did actually. I remember at 4 a.m. sitting there and writing down these rhymes. So it's called Froggy Girl. It's about a little girl who wishes she was a frog, or thinks she's a frog because she can hop, but she learns that she really can't be a frog. So it starts off, this was the rhyme that I remember waking up with. There once was a girl who thought she was a frog, not a chicken, cow, cat, or dog. Ta-da! And then she knew how to hop, so it had to be true. Being a frog seemed right. What else could she do?
That's perfect.
So the rhyme just kind of came in my head, and I just started rolling with it. And then I had to finish it up to, you know, wrap up the story afterwards, but that's how it started.
Wow, that's really wild.
So where are you selling it mostly? Is it Amazon or any of the bookstores, or where can people find it?
It's on every online bookstore that's sold, so it's everywhere. It has a website, so it's FroggyGirlBook.com.
Okay.
So did you get any shadow banning, censorship issues at all, or was it published late enough that kind of had simmered down?
Well, I think the people who would be shadow banning it don't necessarily know that it's a little subversive. So they don't actually know what it's about. I've gotten 1 or 2 hate reviews, but for the most part, they haven't found out that it's like anti-trans. It's just about accepting yourself. It's sort of like the ugly duckling.
Yeah, actually, a really good point.
Yeah, but isn't that what the whole thing is about?
It's a classic.
It's learning how, like, adolescence is a transitional period. And transitional periods are always difficult, no matter whether it's transition in labor is always the most painful part, all of these kind of things. And yet, somehow, this idea that young adults that are in transition can't just learn to accept who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's this whole crux of the insanity of the trans movement, is this idea that if you feel something, it must be true. When we feel like most of what we feel and emote is not true. It's nonsense. It's just a guy cuts me off and I hate him. You don't hate that person. You got scared, and so you have a logical response that you have to learn how to deal with. I mean, learning how to modulate emotions is called being a grown-up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we're used to learn, right? And then that's what classic therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, was all about. A feeling is not a fact. That's what we used to teach. So you feel something uncomfortable, or you feel like maybe you don't fit in, or you feel like maybe you're not a boy or girl. That doesn't mean you're actually something else. It's just a feeling. But you still are. It doesn't, whatever you feel does not necessarily dictate truth and reality. But we know we're living in this world that's what they're teaching children.
Well, that's a really good point. I think we still kind of use that in so many lines, whether you're doing marriage counseling, that feelings aren't really reality, and how to separate that and emotive. But somehow, I don't know, the whole world's gone mad, and and adults just think their feelings are reality, and everyone's acting on that.
Yeah, well, but it started with moral relativism, and that's the thing that people don't want to admit, is that when you lose your moral moorings, which in North America is a Judeo-Christian ethic, and you say, okay, this is reality because there is a God, and God made the world rational, and we must use a rational lens to figure things out, ergo science, not the science, actual science. When you divorce yourself from that and say, it's my truth, well, then this is what you get. Like, you get people say, transing their 2-year-olds,
Right.
which is legitimately a thing that's happened. It's like, oh yeah, it's a 2-year-old, it's a 5-year-old. It's back to the Bill Maher, I wanted to be a pirate, thank God no one cut my eye out and chopped my leg off.
So what's happening with the therapy world then, as far as you see it? If that's a core fact, that feelings don't equal reality, yet what they're at least condoning and proposing in schools with therapists and allowing the trans behavior and hiding it, what's happening with the therapists?
Therapists are not logical people, and they're taking what they used to believe, classical theories about learning how to accept reality. That's actually in DBT, that's called reality acceptance. But whenever the gender issue comes, for some reason, all of those theories and all of those beliefs just get thrown out the window, because we need to just accept that person by their self-identity, as opposed to looking at what they need, and like having them recognize what they need, what is true.
And so, of course, I always like to use I guess if you're trying to have this discussion, argument with someone, and therapist, I would say, well, how is that any different from the person that believes that they're fat? When they look in the mirror, because they see a fat person, they want to starve themselves, they want someone to do a gastric bypass or whatever it may be. I was that person. And so supporting that behavior is, going to kill them. So how's that any different from the thought of
that's a common argument.
sex identity?
And if you're talking to a true believer, it falls completely flat.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because people believe in this magical gender spirit inside people, that they have gender brains that are trapped inside of bodies. And so when you talk about someone who's anorexic, that doesn't have the same kind of religious belief system. So that's why when people use that argument, it just doesn't work when you're talking to somebody who believes in transgender, because they think, oh, you just don't understand. This person is truly a male or female or non-binary or some other mystical creature inside, and you're not being kind and accepting and recognizing what's truly inside that person.
That you can't prove.
That we can't prove.
But yet they say that they have science.
Science doesn't matter, because to them they think they have science.
Yeah, but then it's just scientism, and it's its own religion. And that's what
that's true with a lot of things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've pounded this home. We're devout Christians, and we're like, this is a spiritual battle. It clearly is, because when you distill it down to the essence, that's what it is. They'll get all upset at Catholics for having exorcists, but somehow they think that you're possessed by a different gender.
Right.
It's just demon possession by another name.
It kind of is. And if you even look at some of the people that are identifying as trans, they look that way. And I think that's a lot because they're living this lie, and they have to keep reassuring themselves that this lie is true, and that just really destroys the psyche. And then, of course, we've got all these cross-sex hormones and this belief, this chasing of this identity, to have to keep getting these painful surgeries and things to continue this lie going. And yeah, I think that leads to a sort of a presentation that looks demonic.
Well, all I can say is, when we were talking about hormone replacement therapy and, menopause kind of on briefly before this in the car, and I was saying how difficult it is, even for women. I mean, I don't know, I can't speak to men, but with women and three different hormones you're trying to balance in menopause and replace or not replace, and how much of a nightmare that can be in taking your own sex hormone when you try to put that on some developing child or even a 20-some-year-old. That's the wrong sex hormone. I can't imagine how they feel inside. I mean,
well, it makes them violent, apparently.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you realize when you're giving a young woman testosterone, you're actually inducing menopause symptoms in that woman. So we in our middle age who are dealing with that, which is not fun.
No.
Now you have an adolescent or young adult who's already dealing with their, coming of age and raging hormones of their own, and then you're inducing menopause symptoms in them. They get hot flashes, in fact. So
yeah, I've heard
terrible.
that. And then I can't even imagine pumping a young man full of estrogen and what that does. And then there's so many women that react horribly to progesterone too, with making them psychotic. I mean, people, they just think, they'll be fine. Or they don't even think.
Have you seen the meme that calls menopause cougar puberty?
No, I have not. Uh-oh.
It's they have like this 15-year-old kid, and it's like, nah, my mom's just going through cougar puberty, and she's like all irrational and all this.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's definitely like that. It's awful.
That kitty's got claws.
I'm just getting there. Uh-oh.
So tell us a little bit, we were talking somewhat about, you've been traveling around as usual, all over the country, speaking up. Any big events recently that you've been to? And
yeah, I was just, Moms for America just flew me to Kansas City for their show to talk about parental rights issues, which is very much overlaps this transgender issue, because unfortunately parents who do not affirm their child as transgender are losing rights to their children. I was on the show with another woman. Her name is Jeanette Cooper. She runs an organization called Partners for Ethical Care. And she unfortunately lost custody of her daughter because she did not use her daughter's chosen name. So we talked about that on the show, and that is a theme. And in fact, recently a friend of mine, Michelle Blair, and her daughter, Sage Blair, were addressed by President Trump because Sage had run away because she was being abused by some boys when she identified as trans. The school counselors kept that secret from Michelle, the mom. She ran away and ended up getting trafficked twice.
That's horrible.
And then once they found her and she got back to safety, the social workers would not give Sage back to Michelle, and lied to Sage and said that Michelle, the mom, didn't love her child because she didn't use the proper name. That's
the definition of love, using
a name.
Made-up name.
Yeah, exactly.
Or indulging someone's mental illness is what I would call that. And I think that is wicked and evil.
So, I'm trying to remember what year we first interviewed you and got to know you, but this has gotten a lot of media attention, and I know there's strong camps on both sides, but has anything really changed? I mean, I'm wondering there's got to be some states that are leaning a lot more heavily into this, where it's a lot easier to have your child taken away from you in situations like that than more conservative states. So is there still some?
Yeah, there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of progress, actually. Several states, I don't know the exact number, 20-something states now have bans on what they call gender-affirming care. So some have just the surgeries, some have bans on both the hormones and the surgeries. So there's been a lot of progress to ban that just for minors, not for, once they turn 18, they don't magically figure out that everything's better, and they're still vulnerable, but it's definitely a huge step. And so that's happened in several states. And what else? There's been so many wins lately, I can't even keep track.
Which is good. I mean, it's getting a lot of media attention, and push back on both sides. I'm thinking of some of the recent things I've seen in social media. Teachers that are transgender, especially there's a few that are kindergarten teachers that come out and are pushing their agendas, and parents are speaking out and getting some change. And then to the point where a lot of states have, I know have enacted that under 18, that nothing can happen. So that's good, although I still think we've got a long way to go.
That's why we have to pass the SAVE Act, where we have paper ballots, and Trump rammed into that no transing of, you know,
all
under
the
18.
executive orders. Yeah, I've started to blank. Like Trump has done a crazy amount of executive orders to stop this. So he's done a lot of good work. And also, this is a really great thing I feel proud that I'm kind of involved in. The Federal Trade Commission is doing a huge investigation on all of the doctors and hospitals and people that have been doing this.
Perfect.
From the standpoint that it's fraud, that they've been lying to their consumers, because really patients are consumers now. And it's from that standpoint that they've been lying about, you know, the benefits of cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and these surgeries that are supposed to be gender affirming. So they're doing a tremendous investigation on that right now. There was a huge hearing last summer, July of 2025, and you can look that up on YouTube, where a lot of the whistleblowers and victims of gender medicine, we call them, people who've been harmed by this, spoke out, parents, detransitioners, and so on. And it was really powerful. And I actually submitted some evidence myself, which I'm really proud of. Because
awesome.
I attended a workshop a couple of years ago with Dr. Joanna Olson Kennedy. I don't know if you're familiar who she is. She is one of the evils of the evils of the evils. She's so evil. I don't know. Evil.
Was she the head of the American Academy of Pediatrics or something like that? Or?
No, I don't know if she was the head. She was the head of the LA Children's Hospital Gender Clinic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but she also she doesn't have this role anymore, and maybe because she's under fire. But she was a pending president of WPATH, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health.
Oh my gosh, they have.
But their own evidence
not
was
heard of
that
that.
you shouldn't be transing kids.
Like, do they have evidence?
Well, no, like their own. They were, you know, they had to kind of suppress their own research that they were doing.
So yeah, that was her. So she had this NIH study. I think that's what you're referring to, right? There was an NIH study, and that was another big progress, really, because that got uncovered. She hid the results for 10 years. That basically puberty blockers do not improve the mental health of children.
Yes, I remember that.
And that was, I don't know, billions of dollars, tax-funded study that she hid, and so she was under fire for that. So I think that's also why she didn't.
Well, and that's the fulcrum with which this teeter-totters, right? Which is the idea that you have to affirm your child's identity, or else they're going to kill themselves. Well, their own evidence was no, it doesn't matter. They still kill themselves or whatever because they're mentally ill. I mean, this is a mental illness that needs to be treated as such, whether it's like depression, anxiety, anorexia, whatever.
Exactly.
And it's like, I mean, we have likened this to worse than lobotomies. Like, people used to be sad and they take essentially was an ice pick and shove it in your nose and, scramble your eggs, and then you're not sad anymore. You're not also continent, but that's another problem. Diapers, and yet somehow mutilating somebody, like giving them hormones, chopping off healthy body parts, somehow that's mental health.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. To
call that care, gender affirming care, is such a euphemism. Oh yeah, we call this the modern day lobotomy that's been referenced.
Well, in a way, it's worse. Yeah. It's more disfiguring. I mean, some people were actually helped by lobotomies.
Were they?
Absolutely. Oh. Got the Nobel Prize in 1949.
I know it got the Nobel Prize, but I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there was some my dad had a guy. My dad had a guy that tried to shoot himself, and took out part of his frontal lobe, and totally survived, and was basically not sad. Like the Phineas, that's where all this came from, was Phineas Gage back in the 1850s. He was tamping a rod into he was a railway worker, and he was doing a tamping rod, and there was dynamite underneath this where you're shoving the dynamite in and it's going to blow up the rocks, and it blew back and it hit him in the head, and it took off a bunch of the front of his head, and he survived. And somehow he was like this super normal guy before, and then he came back after he got the rod to the head, and he was still like the same guy, but now he was like this malicious, awful, horrible person.
Oh, I thought he was.
No, it was the other way around.
Okay.
And so then they're like, oh, well, if we mess with the front of the brain, that must be where personality and all of these emotions exist, and then we can somehow short circuit this, and you'll be better. I mean, it's the exact same kind of nonsense thinking.
But he at least he had a really major struggle. He had an injury, and
Right.
he had a really major struggle. We're taking perfectly healthy children and destroying their endocrine systems and destroying their bodies with surgeries, as opposed to taking someone who's had sounds like a horrific injury and
Right,
would suffer
right.
regardless.
I'm just saying where the science came
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
With the history of it is just mind
You want
blowing.
to try. I mean, it's obviously we've done a lot of things in medicine that we're not proud of, but sometimes we do have to do a little bit of experimentation to figure things out. But we know that this is, we don't need to experiment in this case. We know that it's not a good idea to destroy a child's development and sexuality and cognitive abilities and induce cancers and blood clots and all these other things because they have an uncomfortable feeling in their body. That's just, we don't need any more experiments to figure that out.
And the part that you just said is that you take a perfectly normal, healthy child. That part, I mean, we haven't, I wouldn't say haven't placed enough emphasis on, but I think more people need to speak up and say, yeah, feeling uncomfortable and confused and emotionally up and down when you're in puberty, it stinks, it sucks, but that's
Cold.
life that we've all gone through. I mean, almost
becoming an
everybody,
adult.
right?
Yeah.
It's just everybody's hormones are up and down at different times of their life, that all the struggles, it's not a fun time. And it would be nice to just bypass it and skip ahead in the future.
But becoming anything
But-
sucks.
Yeah,
Becoming a doctor
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
Becoming a kiteboarder sucks. Becoming a figure skater sucks. It's like, did you remember
It
watching?
takes work.
Yeah, you watch how many times they fall before they hit one jump, and
Yeah.
then they're lucky if they hit them in the Olympics, and they're at the very peak of that sport. Everything sucks until it doesn't. And we need to get back to this. Guess what? The hardest time you're going to have in your life is probably from 12 to 18 for most people.
Yeah.
So
And then
let's figure out how to navigate those waters. 'cause there's
45 to 55 for some of us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But if you learn that at 12 to 18, when your brain is essentially mush, you're going to do a lot better when that comes back later in life.
Well, you're really speaking to a broader point in our culture where we're all taught, or we're all learning, that we need to have this immediate gratification. The phones have a lot to do with that. It's just our culture in general. I know you've talked a lot about medications and how that it's about all these quick fixes, and to push away uncomfortable feelings as opposed to dealing with them and going through the work to get to the other side. We don't have that in our culture quite as much. And unfortunately, that's something that's very wrong in the mental health field with therapists, because therapists now often want to be liked as opposed to help their patients. So they want their patients to feel good. They want them to come back, as opposed to helping them maybe hear some uncomfortable truths, or pushing them to do something that's uncomfortable, like if they are uncomfortable in a social setting, that they should go out in the world and be around people and not stay home and just be on their phones or something. So now it's all about immediate gratification, and that's really a big part of the problem, and trans is like one major manifestation of that.
Interesting. No, that's a really interesting point. How much do you think it also is the generation, the time that we're at now in history? Because I think the whole generation of friends and patients, whatever, that have grown up and are the helicopter parents wanting to protect their kids, wanting them to be happy. I just want my child to be happy. That kind of an attitude. And so is that what's happening, do you think, as we raise kids
so.
now, and they don't want to see them struggle, they want to protect them at all costs, and even that means sort of lying to them?
I think so. I think that's a big part of it. And then my husband says this a lot, and credit him for this, but he said things really went downhill when we started having participation trophies.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you just participate. You mean you're not going to strive for excellence. You're not going to learn how to lose. You're not going to learn how to win and work harder. You're just all going to get a participation trophy. In a way, that's sort of a form of communism.
Well, it is, but it's fascinating because every elite athlete I've spoken to, we've interviewed Stanley Cup champion, world 4-time top fuel dragster champion, all of these people that we encounter that are at the very top of their game.
Yeah.
They say the same thing. Losing sucks more than winning is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great to get the Super Bowl ring, but it's worse to lose the Super Bowl than it is good to win it.
I see. But you need to learn how to lose to win.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
The probably the biggest point of why you put your kid in sports is to learn how to lose.
Exactly.
You know?
And I think it cheapens the win too if everyone's
Well, of
getting a
course.
trophy.
Yeah, what's the point?
Exactly.
And no one tries. You're not. Why would you try if everyone's just going to get the same prize at the end?
Right. Exactly.
I just read an article how I guess the LA Marathon they gave the medals to anybody who got past mile 18. And they didn't finish because it was hot that day.
No.
Do you know that?
Yeah,
That just
I heard
happened.
that. I heard
No
that.
way.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Which is fascinating because I've run 12 marathons, and I remember, they will remember this.
I think it's
I
22 where you should get the medal. Is that the worst?
26.
I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I call it the 18-mile phenomenon. Every time I got to 18 miles, that's when I was like,
That's when you
I'm an
crapped out.
idiot. I hate this. Why am I doing this?
That's
I'm
the
never
hardest
doing this
time.
again. And then you get to 20, and you go, okay, well, it's just a 10K. And then eventually, you know, if you're hitting your mark, so to speak, as far as nutrition and whatnot, the last 3 miles was never that bad. But it was 18 miles because you're like, I still got 8 miles to go. Like, this is awful.
Yeah, that's like the hardest point because what is it? I don't know the math. It's about 3/4 through, you know? So,
Yeah, 26. So
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway.
26.2, and that last point 2 actually does matter.
Yeah, the point 2. That's tough. That's the
Yes.
most painful 0.2 miles probably of your life.
Yeah. It's
But yeah. Can you imagine being a finisher? I wouldn't want that medal. If I didn't finish it, I don't want the medal.
no, exactly. It's the whole point.
The whole point is to say, I finished this. I accomplished this. If you didn't accomplish it, you shouldn't get the medal for an accomplishment you didn't accomplish.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Seems
What's
sorta
the medal
simple.
for?
But
Showing
yeah,
up.
that is really a testimony to our culture now, that they just want everyone to feel good, and they take away what does feel good is when you actually accomplish that thing. That's what builds self-esteem. That's the other thing. I know that they wanted to do these participation trophies so kids felt good about themselves. But what did they do? I think they actually sunk their self-esteem because then they feel like, well, what's the point?
Right.
Everybody got the same thing. I didn't even have to try for it.
Well, I don't think kids want it either. And I think that there's
Yeah.
evidence to suggest that after Vietnam, the Marines had a terrible time recruiting because, you know, these are the guys that were on the front lines in Vietnam getting ambushed and whatnot. And so they came out with this campaign, you know, and they were like showing all the benefits of joining the military. And their recruiting got worse. So they said, you know what? Who are we as Marines?
Yeah.
We are the tip of the spear. We are the baddest badasses of badass. So they came up with the
That
few,
marketing
the
works.
proud, the Marines. If you want to be the killer of all killers, the baddest ass person in the
Yeah.
military, you don't go to the Navy, you don't go to the Air Force, you don't go to the Army, you go to the Marines.
I like that.
And it exploded their
Interesting.
recruiting. Exploded it because people they know the truth
Yeah.
and they want to live by truth, and they know that, you know, I don't want to just be some guy in the Army. I want to be a Marine. And it was brilliant marketing. When I think it was Shackleton put an ad in the London newspaper. This will be the hardest thing you'll ever experience. You might die. We're going to Antarctica. You'll be gone for probably 3 years. They had more applications than they knew what to do with because people want to be part of something that's real.
Yeah.
Right.
And if everyone's special, then no one's special.
Well, that's exactly right. Just like if everyone's a racist, no one's a racist.
Yes.
The worst thing you've ever done for race relations is call everyone a racist who disagrees with you.
Exactly. And if everyone's transphobic, well, no one is transphobic because that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's not even a thing. I'm phobophobic. I'm afraid of the phobic people that make me whatever.
I'm about reality, so whatever that is.
So you got yourself in a little bit of a Twitter battle with an op-ed that you wrote.
Yeah, did.
About one of my favorite. No, I'm just kidding.
Your favorite topics.
Yeah, well, which was marijuana and some of the harms. Why don't you give us a little synopsis of that, and we'll see where we can agree or disagree on
I know.
this.
I think we disagree a little, but that's okay. So I have a history of working with people with psychosis. I worked in these inpatient, outpatient programs, and this is years ago, so like the mid-2000s. I was seeing a huge cohort of young people coming in who I was told by their families that they were completely normal and okay until they started smoking weed. And then they became psychotic, and they didn't shake it. And so
I'm sorry, they didn't shake it even after they quit?
even after they quit.
Okay.
They basically were diagnosed with schizophrenia and had to be on, all different kinds of meds, and had that flat affect and had to live like a person with schizophrenia. These are young people in their 20s. And we know that's when usually schizophrenia comes about. However, it came, with many of these cases, it came on with the marijuana. I thought, okay, I'm just seeing the rare cases, right? This was then.
Right.
I didn't really think a lot about it. But fast forward, I kept seeing this happen. Then I had a case, a man in his 40s, totally normal. He had some anxiety, but no psychotic symptoms whatsoever. However, it did run in his family because his mother had schizophrenia. And he started smoking weed, and he suddenly started getting really delusional. He thought he was paranoid, and he was acting very strangely. And he had all these symptoms, and he was working at a normal job. He actually I don't want to say, but he worked at a tech job in the Bay Area, and his coworkers called 911 because he was acting really erratic. And the police came, and he actually charged the police, and they shot him.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was dead. The police did not behave properly either, so there was a complicated situation. Right. Also, this was a white man, so no one cared because he was white, and that was when everything really changed for me, where I felt like I was being neglectful. I would not say I never encouraged the weed use, but I didn't really put the two and two together that like maybe this could really be serious, and that was when he became psychotic. And in that case, it didn't literally kill him because of course the police officer did, but it was the psychosis that put him in that scenario.
Right.
And so I just keep seeing this situation over and over again with people professionally and personally, and then I did some research, and I did see that there are several studies that show that there is a huge correlation, we'll just say, between marijuana use and psychosis. And my op-ed did not even propose any laws. It didn't even say we need to make anything legal or illegal, because I don't know. I don't know how to set the policy for it. However, all it said was, let's acknowledge that there are some downsides to this. There are downsides to marijuana, and for some people, in fact, many people, it can be very harmful. And the things that we're saying that are beneficial maybe aren't as beneficial as we once believed. So that's
I think that's a total valid point. And Brazen said, we were talking, when driving up here, that we, in our long combined careers in the area we lived in, there was it was like a methamphetamine capital, I think, of the U.S. for a while, but there was tons of drug use of all kinds, marijuana. We never saw, I can't recall a case of marijuana-induced psychosis, although...
But you don't know.
We don't know.
You don't know because you see people after the fact.
Correct.
And so it was harder. So what did I see? I saw guys where you're like, Wayne, how you doing?
Yeah.
Fine. And you're like, okay. I think Wayne has smoked a little too many bowls.
Right.
And then I'd see a guy who was a professional, like high-end, professional pilot, and he'd smoke a bowl every single night. But he wouldn't smoke 10. And he would, he had his strain, and it was like having a cocktail every night for this guy. And he's like, this is how I sleep, this is how my back doesn't hurt. It actually clears my head, my anxiety's better. So, like, it's really hard. And then there's the chicken and the egg. Is it people that have a diathesis to become psychotic, get a little anxious, they get oversold, weed cures everything, which is the biggest pile of nonsense ever.
That part.
Then they experiment with it, and whoops, now they could have got really drunk, puke their brains out, say I'll never drink again, and you're done, you're hungover for a day. But here you do this weed for 2 or 3 months, and now you're stuck being a schizophrenic for the rest of your life.
It's possible.
Yeah.
So we just are not looking at it, and I think what my op-ed was saying was, let's take a look at this, and let's stop ignoring this trend. After that op-ed came out, plenty of families that had somebody in their life that went through this thanked me for it. There are accounts on social media where they speak a lot on this topic because somebody in their family went through a very similar thing. And so this is not a one-off case. If you talk to any therapist who's worked in an inpatient, more acute setting, they'll all say they have seen the very similar pattern where they'll see, especially young people because their brains are developing, who are using marijuana and they end up with psychosis. Sometimes it's permanent, sometimes it wanes. But they see that happening. I think with the high levels of the THC, it's stronger than it used to be. It's not just it just chills you out. Like it's more than that. Yeah.
No, I had a buddy, like, and this guy is the nicest, most normal business owner, very successful guy. One of his clients gave him a brownie pan, and he's like, well, this doesn't do anything. And so
the edibles are the worst.
They're the worst. So he ends up eating however many of these, and he gets really sick, and then he becomes entirely paranoid. So he calls the guy up, and he's like, whatever. Well, by the time that this guy drove 20 minutes across town to, like, talk him off the ledge, he was sitting in his front room with his gun in his lap, convinced that this guy was going to come and steal all of their things.
Wow, that's so scary.
It's horrifying. Like, I mean, if he would have been a little bit unstable, I mean, he could have ended up killing somebody.
Right.
And the thing, too, that a lot of people point out is with alcohol and other things, we acknowledge that there are harms. I mean, nobody says alcohol is healthy for you. Very few people say that. And also, we know that you shouldn't drink and drive. But there are no, I mean, we have like the blood alcohol content laws. There's none of that for marijuana. There's really not many regulations when it comes to driving when high. So there are plenty of car accidents where you find out the person has been smoking weed, but there isn't like a marijuana alcohol or marijuana blood content.
You have that with prescription medication. We talk about this a lot. Prescription medications are even
and that's
worse.
a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, but you had another confounder, and this is the only. I was always very libertarian on the whole drug thing, and I've changed that position to a certain degree just because having worked in Eugene, Oregon, and stepping over bodies. When I was like in literally beautiful part of downtown Eugene, and you're stepping over bodies, and I'm like, okay, I get this. So you want to decriminalize meth and heroin, and if I'm a libertarian, that works good for me because I'm never going to use meth or heroin.
Right.
The problem is the government isn't protecting me from me, which is a libertarian argument.
Right.
They're protecting the person that's going to destroy their life.
And
from me.
I mean, have you ever? I think a lot of us, myself included, are kind of naive when it comes to addicts. I mean, when you're talking about a real addict, you can't be libertarian. You can't be. So
that's true.
This is a really big, you can have a real big ethical argument about, the pros and cons, and I can see there's lots of different sides to it, but we have to at least acknowledge that.
I think, you raised a really good point, and we can sort of debate the nuances of it, but it's true because, there's pot shops on every corner, and some places have like 5-to-1 liquor, weed stores to liquor stores, and it's great for
We lived in a town of 10,000 people. We had one liquor store and 3 weed shops.
I think I got up to 4 at one point, but you're right. It's like, well, use it responsibly. Don't give it to the developing brain. I think more people are accepting of that. But then this whole cohort of people, and I'm really big into epigenetics too, of what everyone's body and genetics and metabolism of drugs, substances is so different that you just don't know. And you're right, if you have that predisposition or something where you don't metabolize that properly, and it can put you into a permanent that's serious. Yeah. So I think that it totally is a valid point to bring up because you're right. I mean, we talk about the alcohol part, but we just kind of...
We have to get away. I mean, I think the fear, like when people that are, on the pro-weed side or whatever, get really angry in a response, that tells you everything you need to know, right? Like, so for instance...
There is something going on.
There's something going on. So if I want to pull a pin on a grenade and throw it into a bin of social media, just go on the American Academy of Pediatrics Twitter feed or whatever and start bashing vaccines and pediatricians, which I have done.
Which he loves
and it's
to do.
fascinating because what ends up happening is you have no evidence, and I said that's because there is no evidence to show.
Yeah.
So you guys can do the studies, and then you can say it's safe or not. And then within about 5 tweets, I'm an idiot, I'm a quack, and I should lose my license.
Right, they don't actually have an argument anymore.
Report me to the Board of Medicine. Yeah. Like that's always how it ends every time. So I just don't engage in that anymore.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. My blood pressure doesn't need it, and I don't know that I'm doing anything.
It's just hitting a wall. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we don't want to go back to the reefer madness days because that was kind of crazy. Because clearly it's not nearly as dangerous as the reefer madness people told us. But it's obviously not without risk.
And it's different now than it was during that time. So that's the other thing.
Well, I think edibles changed the entire game.
Yeah.
We told our kids, we said, look, if you're going to experiment with this, smoke it. Because you can at least control the dose to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I said once you get that edible in there, God knows if you're going to be jumping off a bridge
and you're going to die.
Right.
No,
and it's gummy bears and fun things to eat. Think about all the poor, people who pick that up and don't realize.
I was thinking that too. They have the big thing about Tide Pods. Hide them from your kid. All these reports of them ending up in emergency rooms from eating. I'm like, what kid thinks a Tide Pod is candy? I guess. And how many people?
But now they're going after Zin pouches. Like somehow.
Well,
what's
that
his
looks
name?
like candy. A Zin. It looks like the peppermint.
Yeah, if you were a child and you have a Zin in your mouth for more than 4 seconds,
I spit that thing out.
I don't even know what that is.
Nicotine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm so naive.
They should be spitting that thing out in
Schumer
seconds.
was like all after nicotine. I'm like, there's zero evidence other than in nicotine poisoning, which is a thing, that nicotine in and of itself is dangerous at all.
Yeah.
Well, that's another
whole
discussion.
can of worms.
Right, that's another. I actually just went to a conference where they were talking about the benefits of nicotine, and I'm intrigued. I need to learn more about that.
Yeah, it's a very good
It's
doping
a good
substance.
Yeah, you do
like
have to
for your memory and such.
And even athletic performance.
Really? Mm-hmm. I need to do more
Yeah,
research.
but then Tucker comes out. So Tucker started ALP. He started his own nicotine pouch company.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, so he said he was flying back from Europe, so he had this 8-hour flight, and he did 30 of the pouches on the flight in 8 hours.
Ugh.
30.
That's crazy.
So no, it's insane levels of nicotine. So he's like,
is that why he talks like that?
I think so. That explains it all, right?
Is that
Apparently, it makes you question the government of Israel.
Yeah.
If you have enough nicotine, but I don't know.
Maybe it makes you laugh in a high-pitched voice too.
Yeah, like a maniac. Yeah, I don't know, but you're like, Tucker. Okay, I get it. You don't drink anymore. That's good, but somehow 30 Zin pouches in 8 hours or ALP pouches in 8 hours isn't an addiction. Riddle me this.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the marijuana. What prompted me to write that, there was a lot of chatter on social media because the New York Times did an op-ed that said, I think it was, the title was something like, "It's time to admit we have a marijuana problem," was the title of theirs, which drew a lot of criticism on their end. And so I wanted to piggyback on that because they brought up that there are problems with it. And then if you look on a broader sense too, just like our society, if you look at areas where it has been legalized and it has just been, it's more than legalized, it's more like been normalized and glorified, I think is really
I think that's the issue.
The issue, because there are things that are legal that we know that are bad for us, but they're not glorified, whereas marijuana has been glorified. And that's, to me, that's the bigger problem. So I wanted to piggyback on that.
I also think that we live in a neighborhood that's fairly mature. I don't know if any of our 70-year-old friends would sleep without a weed gummy now.
Really?
Pretty much. I don't think there's a single one that's...
Doesn't make it right necessarily.
Yeah.
But it does make my back feel better.
But not mine. So goes right back to the whole point of what we're talking about individuals and genetics and so forth.
Well, that's a huge deal because, I've said this numerous times. I said most people that recreationally experiment with marijuana will go, "I'd rather have a glass of wine," and I think that's absolutely true. Most people, but there's some people. Like I have a friend that, he's kind of a subdued, kind of into himself guy. 2 hits of sour diesel. That guy's a used car salesman. Like it's just a completely, and it's just like, how does your brain work? Like completely different than mine.
Very different.
If I tried that kind of stuff, I'd be so paranoid. It's so unbelievably dysphoric and uncomfortable. It just.
I mean, my biggest concern are the young people, the developing brains, and how it's being normalized for like teenagers, minors, and what's also happening is kids are being more isolated just in general. They went through a whole lockdown period and learned they could be separate from society and continue on. And then I think marijuana very much adds to that isolation. I mean, alcohol has its problems, but there is something more social about it than marijuana.
Right, because it's more of a disinhibition than marijuana. I mean,
social lubricant, as they say.
Right.
So actually, it makes me think, though, let's kind of explore this a bit more because the data shows, and I always read about surveys and things coming out, show that kids, especially in their 20s now, that generation, are less inclined to drink alcohol. It's gone down quite
I
significantly.
think it's because of the weed.
I think you
And
are 100%
they're
correct.
more
And no
likely
one
to use
mentions
weed.
that.
Well, no, I went into the local liquor store and was like surprised at how many, they were sampling them at one point, but how many types of beverages now contain THC in them.
Yeah, there you
And the manager there was saying that this has become the new thing in the 20-something generation. They want these THC drinks, and they're using them instead.
Yeah, but it's interesting because even Peter McCullough's come out and he's like, you know, they're drinking less. They drink like 30% less.
Yes, it's 30%.
And it was so
Because
funny.
they're home all the time. That's part of it.
Well, right, and we mentioned this.
But DoorDash does deliver alcohol.
Yeah, but we mentioned this before on our show.
But they're not partying. They're not together.
But that's exactly the point. He was trying to, you know, they're more health conscious. And I'm like, no, they're staying at home and they're watching
isolated,
porn
yes.
and they're smoking weed and they're playing video games because they're not having sex either.
Because
that actually requires a person.
Well,
Actual sex requires a person or a robot.
But this all goes back to our first part of the conversation. A lot of these kids that are getting caught in this trans thing, they're dissociating from themselves, from their bodies. They're not comfortable socially, and that's where this trans ideology gets set in because you're so isolated and you're dissociated and you're in this online world.
Well, and the other part of that I really want to emphasize, which is I think that there's a difference between my 70-year-old neighbors using, you know, a low-dose gummy every night and a 15-year-old isolated,
wanting to get
potentially on the spectrum child smoking a gram a day. You know, obviously those are two different things, but it also it shows the bigger point. It spotlights the bigger point of the developing brain. And I remember having these arguments with people like over 20 years ago. I'm like, we're giving SSRIs to a developing brain. It's not the same. You wouldn't feed your 5-year-old Coors Light. You shouldn't feed them Prozac.
They have no frame of reference, and they can't tell you their side effects. They can't articulate those things.
And now they're finding that there's people that get on SSRIs and have permanent sexual dysfunction after you get them off of it. Like, it's crazy. So this whole developing brain, and it's back again to the same thing. Pain is your enemy. I feel emotional pain. There's got to be a solution for my emotional pain. And there is. It's called suck it up and learn how to live as a grown-up.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not a pill.
There is a huge pipeline from kids who have been put on SSRIs and other psychomeds to trans. That's actually a thing.
Well, and it's part of the financial bullshit grinder. I mean, I was telling you guys earlier, I read a Substack this morning. In the state of Oregon, 37.7% of children on Medicaid are on psychotropic medications. And the number one type of psychotropic is not an SSRI or Ritalin stimulants. It's antipsychotics.
Yeah, that's an amazing...
You know, how to keep...
So what do you think that is when you said, is it part of the whole, I'm feeling down, depressed about being a kid and figuring out who I am in society, and so they, you know, throw them on the SSRIs or psych meds, and then if that's making them worse or not better, it's like the natural thing is to explore a different identity. What do you think?
Well, back to your first part, I think a lot of it has to do with the grown-ups also, that they're uncomfortable with the child being uncomfortable. And also, they might even be uncomfortable with their own parenting or, you know, sometimes there's other things going on. I don't like to blame parents or it's, you know,
it's not an easy job.
It's different situations, but there are a lot of circumstances. I mean, you were mentioning the kids, the foster kids. So they're all put on medications off because they need to just slap that Band-Aid on because they can't monitor in the same way. The doctors aren't going to change the meds because they're moving from home to home. There's so many reasons for that, and it's difficult. And so there's a lot. I don't know. There's so many different variables going on here.
But it's interesting. I think that there's the parents trying to be the best parents they can be, being scared that they're going to be a bad parent.
Yeah.
When the reality is, you're going to hurt your children as a parent. You're just going to hurt them in ways you have no idea how you're going to hurt them. When we talk to our adult children now, we thankfully have, I think, fairly well-adjusted, at least very honest and open adult children that discuss this stuff with us. They're, you know, because there's no threat, and it's fascinating because they're like, oh, when you did this thing, that really,
and you had no idea.
And I had no idea.
Yeah.
because, you know, the 6-year-old isn't going to tell you, you know, this is bruising my soul, you know, but the 26-year-old will. And you're like, wow, I had no idea that that was the thing. And so, but then we've also raised an entire generation of, you know, Gen Xers that went to therapy and were told that all of their problems were because of their shitty parents. And you know, I went to this conference, a men's conference for church, and part of it was exploring the mother wound and the father wound, and about how we were wounded by our parents. And we sat down in a small group, and I looked at these guys and I said, I'm calling BS on this. This is nonsense. I get it. None of our parents are perfect. But you know what? The guys that stormed the beach in Normandy didn't save the free world because they were concerned about how their father wounded them. They had a sense of duty and they freaking did it.
Right.
And that's what we need to be going
back
to.
It's about taking personal responsibility again. It's that idea. And there is a Winnicott had this psychological theory called the good enough mother, and that was about it. Just as long as you had a parent that was good enough, then you're okay to thrive. And so they didn't. Back in the day, the original psych theories didn't nitpick every little thing that your parent did or didn't do to create that you can blame all of your own problems with. But I do think culturally now, broadly speaking, that parents, they can't tolerate their child in pain. So they bring their kids to therapy so quickly, and they want their therapist, I know this because as a therapist, I watch this dynamic a lot. They wanted me to fix their kid. And I'm like, no, like you need to do the parent thing. And I mean, they parent, but they're busy with work or whatever. And a lot of it has to do with their own insecurities. So they just feel like they can't do it. They feel like I would be the expert and I'd be better at it. And I would tell them, no, what my job is to do is to help connect you, help you communicate with your child. And usually when I got the two of them together and have a good communication session is when things got better. So that if parents can, you know, really believe in themselves, because that's really a lot of what my message is. All of the things I write, all of the books I've written, a lot of my messages is for parents to believe in themselves and not jump straight to experts and to question experts, because that's how kids are going to thrive, if they see that you are taking charge, that you believe in yourself.
No, that's a very good point. We need more of that. So I know we talked before, but I want to kind of bring it up again because I think it's a very important point. So you've branched out and you're on your own now, and I know there's a lot of people that are looking for help because their kids are in this zone or being pushed on a therapist that is pushing the wrong ideas, pushing towards transition or affirming that stuff. I hate that word too, but going along with it. So can you tell us a little bit about how people reach out to someone, like whether it's you, if you don't want to be inundated with 1,000 patients, all of a sudden, who do they look for, and how do people kind of connect with the therapist that they know is going to support that parent?
Yeah, so first of all, I encourage people not to go straight to a therapist. So don't go straight to a therapist. Try things first. I mean, unless your child is, you know, really in a dangerous situation, if it's, you know, really physically dangerous, I would try to keep it within the family, or keep it within other resources. But if you feel you've tried a lot of things and you're stuck, then you can look for other resources. There are a few other groups or things you can look for. So there's a group called conservativecounselors.com. So that has some counselors that aren't going to be totally captured by leftist ideology. There's a place called Open Therapy Institute, and they have a list of therapists too. My website is thetruthfultherapist.org. I do consultations, so I can point you in the right direction and help you find a therapist. It's hard because these directories are pretty thin, and you're going to be living in somewhere in the country or the world, and you're probably not going to find someone in person. I personally believe Zoom therapy is not very useful or very good. Mostly, especially with kids, because most of the time they're spending too much time on their computers to begin with. So putting them online with another therapist is not exactly the best plan. So I actually, on my website and on my Substack, there's a Substack called What Makes a Good Therapist, and on there it has just a whole bunch of checklist things for you to look out for, even questions to ask so you can screen for a good therapist. And I mean, I don't even think you even need my advice. I think if you just ask people questions about how they handle certain things, if they match your values, if they're not going to just affirm things that you don't believe in. I mean, these are some common sense things. I'd say just don't assume this therapist, just because they're a therapist, is going to do the right thing. That always stay on top of it.
That's a really good point. I was thinking too earlier that the way society has changed, with people moving all over the place, and we lost connection with the generational family. That parenting's tough, even with support, and so you don't have grandmas or aunts and uncles close by to bump things off of like we used to, and so people do feel alone, even if they're struggling to parent, or they're single parents, and so trying to keep it, like you said, with a close friend or a parenting group. There's all kinds of ones, like we did MOPS, the mothers of preschoolers, through our church, but there's stuff all over the place.
So church is a huge source of support that I would recommend people to tap into. Maybe you're a priest, you're a pastor, you're a rabbi. There's other places to get help. Your neighbor, grandma, cousin, adult siblings. So there's other ways to get help. That's not necessarily a therapist.
So if you had a reading list for struggling families, where would you go?
Oh, like on the trans issue?
Let's start with trans, because obviously your book.
Yeah, there's my book. There's another book that I really like by a woman named Maria Keffler, and she runs an organization called Advocates, I think it's for Protecting Children, Advocates Protecting Children. I'm not sure the word in between. But her book is Desist, Detox, Detrans, I think is what it is. Anyway, her book is really good. Look up Maria Keffler. She's got a good book.
Okay.
And that one of mine I think are the best. I'm trying to think what other ones. There are several books out there, but honestly, most of them are pretty academic, and they're not as practical. They don't have like tools. They're more just like help you understand what's going on. I don't know. I don't believe in parenting books in general.
I love it.
I don't believe in self-help. I think that's the problem. We're in this self-help culture, and I think we've run into trouble with that. I really encourage people to stop outsourcing all of their thinking and start using your own thinking and using your own instincts. That's what I believe.
I love it. I mean, I think you're right. I just remember all that self-help, this and that, and in the end, common sense always prevails. I think people know in their heart and their minds what's right. Look at...
And it just depends.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, with self-help is not necessarily that it's bad advice, but it might be bad advice for that certain person. So you've got people that might need to be more present with their kids because they're distant, they're busy with work or something else. But then you've got people that are maybe a little too over-involved with their kids, and they need to maybe back off a little and give their kids a little space. But you need to be use some discretion. What is really going on in your family? And that's why a good therapist would be able to figure that out for you. But a self-help book would be like, set boundaries. Well, maybe you don't need to set boundaries. Maybe you've already got too many boundaries. Or, maybe it's like, give your child space. Or maybe you've given your child too much space. So it just depends. And I think it's hard to give broad advice. That's why my book, honestly, it doesn't have this one-size-fits-all solution. It has ideas. What I really try to do is give you the facts, the information, so you could take it and run with it, and use your own judgment.
Love it. Okay, Pam, I'm going to make you share your list of social handles and where everyone can find you. You're writing.
I actually just changed my Twitter. It used to be Truth Therapist, but because it sounded like you could read it to be Truth the Rapist, people were making fun of me.
You're right. Ooh. You put that together, and people like, someone I know over here would do that.
It became a running joke, and I finally changed it.
That sounds like that Jeopardy joke from
that's like
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
I'll take penis mightier, Alex.
Well, I'm now blanking on the...
Okay, so
anyway,
on Twitter.
Okay, so it's P. Garfield Jaeger, which is my first initial and my last name. So P. Garfield Jaeger with a J. Jaeger spelled with a J. I'm generally, though, the Truthful Therapist, so I'm the Truthful Therapist on Instagram. It's really the.truthfultherapist. My website is thetruthfultherapist.org. I have a Substack, Pam the Truthful Therapist, because that's what you can find me. And I have link trees on there. You can see I write a lot of op-eds. That's what I've been spending a lot of my time doing. When you asked me in the beginning, I didn't really say that. I've been doing a lot of writing there and touring and doing speeches and such.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. And then it would be nice to be able to link our previous show interviews with you too, so that people can kind of go back and see your story and where you came from and how you kind of did I wouldn't say 180, but had a big mind change when the world went crazy with COVID. So maybe we can do that. So it's been so fun having you in the studio with us.
Thank you.
And
we know this was a big deal because May made me trim my nose hairs this morning.
Oh, no. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Of course, she's got to throw that in there. Oh, my word.
I love being in the middle of a
Yeah, there you go. So this has been great. Thanks for turning your head back and forth in a swivel while we work out studio stuff. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, that you share it with someone.
Share, like, comment, please.
Yes. Send us your feedback, what you think. And as always, keep it BS free.